I was just wondering if I could ask a question on Venezuela, maybe now or after.
Let me see if there are other questions on Nicaragua. I don't see other hands up. So yeah, it's okay with you, or Ravina? Okay, let's go to Emma and then Yuri.
Yep, I was just wondering if OHCHR could comment on the arrest warrant for the opposition leader, and is Turk in touch with Maduro, or what are his plans? Do you plan to write to them or speak with him? Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. On Venezuela, we still don't have a presence in the country. By the way, you must be aware of the history of that. There is still contact with the authorities. There is still engagement. We still put our concerns to them. We are continuing to urge them all parties, to resolve all electoral disputes by peaceful means. And there needs to be a climate where there is a full protection of the human rights of all individuals, regardless of their political affiliation.
Thanks. Yuri.
Thank you. Hello, Ravina. Hello, Damin. My first question is on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, because the law that was already signed by Volodymyr Zelensky that can prohibition of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. 2 weeks ago, your office told me that you are analyzing this law and that you have to check if there are any violation of human rights, etc. Do you have any update on that? That's my first question. And my second question is on Pavel Durov, because the same thing was told 2 weeks ago, that he was arrested and you needed more information before you can really comment on this matter. Now we know that he's facing 10 years of jail in France, if he is convicted, of course, but he can't leave the country. And one of the main accusation against him is that he is not cooperating with judges in France, and not only with them, also with the police, for example, when they are asking for access to some discussions. Are you following that? Because this is really unprecedented in the fact that one of the chief of social media was arrested because he is not allowing authorities to have access to discussions. And I remind that Telegram is used by a lot of human rights defenders because there is no cooperation with authorities. Thanks.
I'll answer it. No worries. Thanks, Yuri. So on to your first question. So Yuri is referring to the law that was adopted in Ukraine prohibiting the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine, and this was adopted on the 20th of August. Yuri, as mentioned, we are analyzing the law. The law does raise serious concerns with regards to compliance with international human rights law, especially the freedom of religion. It will take us time to analyze it. I was in touch with colleagues who told me that the law was published on the 26th of August. So we have now received it. We're looking at it, analyzing it. This will take us some time, and we will make our analysis public. But at first sight, already we can say that the law does raise concerns regarding compliance with international human rights standards. On your second question on the situation of Mr. Pavel Durov, this is a very complex case. It raises a lot of human rights concerns, and in fact, what our office is trying to do is to maybe perhaps publish a paper that sets out the parameters within which these situations should be looked at. I mean, the other most recent incident, of course, is also the banning of X in Brazil, which also raises similar concerns about states having the duty to ensure that social media platforms, comply with the law, that freedom of expression is permitted, but in line with also certain restrictions. And any restrictions that are imposed, we need to ensure that they are proportional, that they are not disproportionate, and that they are in line with international human rights standards. So we are following this case, and it's difficult for us to get more specific at this point on this specific case and the precise charges that have been laid against him, because again, we don't have access to the full information. But I can perhaps in the coming days provide you with more of an analysis.
Sure, that will interest many people if you can share with others too. Moussa?
Merci Alexandra, bonjour Ravina. Ma question concerne le team arrêtés au Yémen. Comme vous avez dit, il y a des accusations de la part des Houthis, comme quoi cette équipe est accusée d'être en collaboration avec la CIA et le Mossad. Vous avez dit que c'est pas vrai, que ces accusations sont fausses. Ma question est la suivante. Est-ce que les Nations Unies ont fait une enquête, une investigation pour vérifier vraiment si cette équipe appartient ou collabore vraiment avec la CIA et le Mossad? Je rappelle seulement qu'une situation semblable, il y a eu des accusations par Israël contre l'UNRWA. Les Nations Unies ont procédé à une investigation, une enquête qui a duré plusieurs semaines pour vérifier si les employés de l'UNRWA collaborent avec Hamas ou autres. Est-ce que vous avez fait une investigation semblable avec les collaborateurs des Nations Unies au Yémen? Merci.
Thanks, Musa. Let me be clear again. The United Nations unequivocally rejects these false allegations. These are completely made-up allegations. There was, as I said, a video of our staff member that was put on social media as well, which was clearly a forced confession. Our colleague looked very distressed in that video. And there is a record as well of UN staff being detained in Yemen. As I mentioned, we have other staff that have been detained in 2021 and 2023 respectively, incommunicado. If there are any cases where staff are alleged to have broken laws, that needs to be handled in line with due process. There needs to be due process, legal representation, evidence needs to be presented. None of this has been done. These are clearly made up, fabricated accusations, and we reject them unequivocally.
And je vais rajouter ça, Moussa, les 19 août, je ne sais pas si vous avez vu, en fait, les porte-parole du secrétaire général, M. Dujarric, a bien insisté sur le fait que, et en particulier dans ces cas, les partenaires des Nations Unies, les Nations Unies, leur staff, ne devraient jamais être arrêtés ou retenus dans le cadre de la mise en œuvre de leur mandat. Comme Ravine a dit, il y a effectivement des procédures, et vous avez rappelé les cas de UNRWA, qui était effectivement un autre cas. On a eu des informations, on a agi sur ça, mais les staffs de l'UNRWA n'ont pas été retenus ou arrêtés de façon arbitraire, ce qui a été le cas en fait au Yémen. Il y a encore... Ah Moussa, vous avez un follow-up?
Oui, merci Alexandra. Oui, j'ai bien compris tout ce que vous avez dit et je suis tout à fait d'accord avec les demandes des Nations Unies et puis la détention arbitraire, c'est pas, je ne défends pas ça du tout. Mais ma question est vraiment très claire. Est-ce que vous avez fait ou vous allez faire une investigation pour vérifier ces accusations ou pas? C'est tout. Merci.
Musa, again, we unequivocally reject these allegations. These are spurious. Our staff have been arbitrarily detained. They are being forced to confess. There is nothing there. There is no evidence that has been provided to us to the contrary.
Isabelle.
A follow-up on Emma's question on Venezuela. I would like to know if you can give us a comment on the arrest warrant against the former presidential candidate that was issued yesterday.
Yeah, Isabel, no, as I said, we are... We're not in a position to comment on individual cases, but what we are seeing in Venezuela is a very unfortunate situation where people are being detained for expressing their right to political participation, for their freedom of expression, for freedom of assembly. It is there's a climate it's a climate of fear in the country at the moment, and we are urging the government to ensure that all steps are taken in line with international human rights law, with transparency, and that steps are taken to resolve this dispute peacefully.
Maya Plants.
Thank you very much for taking my question, Alessandra. My question is regarding actually the question of X being banned in Brazil and the position of the Human Rights Office. Also, the question of the CEO that was detained from Telegram. Of course, they have been allegedly not collaborating to allowing too much crime to occur in their platforms and hate speech. So what's the position in terms of the hate speech, misinformation, and crime happening in these platforms? Are we seeing something new?
Thanks, Maya. Yes, we are seeing a lot more proliferation of hate speech, incitement to hatred, incitement to violence, harmful disinformation proliferating on social media platforms. And there are clear guidelines for businesses and for states on managing the spread of misinformation, while at the same time ensuring that they do not infringe on the legitimate right to freedom of expression of people to take to these social media platforms and to be able to speak freely without fear of reprisals. On Brazil's blocking in particular, as I said in response to Yuri's question, both of these cases raise a lot of difficult and important issues, and it is complex because we need to be very careful that you're not encouraging overreach by the state or overreach by businesses, while at the same time imposing the kinds of limits that are necessary to protect people. So states should be able to regulate platforms effectively, and the platforms should comply with laws that are consistent with international human rights law, including the principles of legality, necessity, and proportionality. Hate speech, incitement to hatred or violence, harmful disinformation need to be addressed, as I said. But these actions need to address them should be in line with human rights law, and they should not be overly broad. On the responsibility of this particular platform, of X, or to respect human rights, I can also share with you again an open letter that the High Commissioner had sent to Elon Musk in November 2022, in which he set out these parameters, these guidelines under international law. He set out the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and stressed X's responsibility as well to respect human rights, to address the adverse human rights impacts relating to its operations. I can share that letter with you. And as I said, we will be working on a more kind of succinct analysis of these issues and the standards that need to be applied to these individual cases.